Hello, this is David Heine, Aspect Art. Today we're in the Scheepvaartmuseum for an exhibition about heroes. What heroes? It's a sort of way of looking at heroism, hero worship, whether it exists here in Holland and what form it takes, actually. So join us now at the Scheepvaartmuseum for Heroes, What Heroes? Thank you. Good morning, Willem. We're here at the Scheepvaartmuseum and we're standing near the exhibition on Heroes, What Heroes? Could you tell us a little about what this exhibition conveys?
Well, it's about heroism, obviously, maritime heroism, and especially about what did it mean, what was it? I mean, we all have our heroes in every era, every time. For the Dutch in the 17th century, admirals, seafarers were heroes, but you only know them, we only know them from paintings, from prizes, from beautiful objects. But after all, a hero becomes a hero when he's dead, at least usually. So what we're trying to do here is to explain to the public that it was really, the people had to die first, that death was a very important aspect in this heroism. And then after that we try to explain to our public, I can't help it. After that we try to explain to the public what war at sea was all about, all the aspects of war. What could you use a navy for? To escort convoys, which is very boring. A navy can serve as a place where you can have a career, where you can make money, where you can earn medals on your breast. Navy, naval ships stimulate inventions, helping mankind forward with all sorts of things. It's like more or less like space, what was done in space research. Well, that's what we're trying to explain in this exhibition. What is behind the heroism.
Now you've chosen here in the opening part of the exhibition certain Dutch heroes that probably everybody knows their name. Could you tell us a little about each of them and why they're significant and why you've chosen them?
Yes, well, the eldest two are Maarten Harpertson Tromp and Michiel de Ruiter. They are probably the most famous, and if you probably look at it with hindsight, de Ruiter is most likely the only one who will survive as a hero, being a real hero in the end. Piet Hein, he became a hero because he captured the Silver Fleet, Spanish Silver Fleet. It was a huge sum of money and bringing forth a huge dividend for the West India Company, for which he sailed. He was a money hero, really. Then we have Zoutman, who was a hero at the end of the 18th century in a war against what we call the Fifth Anglo-Dutch War, which wasn't very heroic period. There wasn't very much heroism in Holland at that time, and Zoutman didn't really win the sea battle against the English, the Battle of the Doggerbank, but at least he brought it to a head. I mean, it was indecisive, and because there wasn't very much heroism in the country at that time, he was regarded as, he became more or less automatically a hero. Then we have Van Speyk in the early 19th century. The Dutch had been humiliated by the Belgians separating from our country. And what did Van Speyk do? He was on the River Scheldt, anchored there, and the anchor started dragging, and the ship went into the coast into the riverside of the Scheldt, and boarded by the Belgians, and he blew up a ship, which was at that time regarded as an enormous deed of heroism, which in fact, of course, well, you would say he was rather crazy, I suppose. And then finally Karel Doorman, the admiral in the Second World War, who led the battle in the Java Sea against the Japanese, who were invading Indonesia at that time. And he didn't really want to go into that battle. He realized that the Japanese were going to be stronger, they were going to invade anyway, and he was far more wanted to take the fleet and withdraw to Australia and strengthen and then come back and try and defeat the Japanese. And of course the battle in the Java Sea was a disaster. I mean, the fleet was destroyed almost completely, and Karel Doorman died and never knew that he became a very big hero after that.
Now, you've gone on to point out that in Holland there is a slightly different rendering of hero worship than, let's say, England, where Lord Nelson has an entire square. Could you tell us a little of the anecdotal Dutch concept of hero honoring?
Well, the Dutch, as you probably well know, do not like heroism. They don't like heroes. People are in this country are supposed to be as normal as they can be, and everyone who is a little more than that is not accepted very much in this country. That's the reason that heroism isn't very popular here. Nevertheless, we see that some people stick out in this, and we have a few of them here in this exhibit. I think that's the main difference between the Brits. They really, really like their heroes and worship them. I mean, Trafalgar Square with Nelson there. There's no such equivalent of De Ruyter in this country, while he was absolutely as much a hero as Nelson was.
I seem to recall that they actually made a statue out of cast iron as opposed to bronze or anything.
Yes, well, yes, and not only that, they made De Ruyter has a cast iron statue in Flushing. They couldn't afford stone or bronze. They obviously didn't want to have it in Amsterdam, and it wasn't built there in the 17th century after De Ruyter died, but it was built in the 19th century when we had the revival of nationalism. During this period when Dutch became a nation, a kingdom, 300 years after, over 200 years after De Ruyter died.
Now, you spoke earlier of the conditions of war that might be experienced. Now, when I look at some of these paintings, it looks terribly confusing what's going on, and a whole lot of people swimming in the water. It looks devastating. What was the life like of a sailor on a man-of-war?
Well, talking about the 17th century, I think it must have been pretty awful. We have descriptions. I mean, the boats were very small, and they had up to 200-300 people on a ship and living in very, very cramped and terrible conditions, and with a big certainty that they were not going to get back home. That must have been quite horrible to live there. But then, of course, I mean, you had to make money. You went out there, you went to sea because you got paid, you got money, you could send it to your wife or your children. It was a means of living, as it is today. I mean, the conditions today are far better, but once the war starts and you're going to battle, there's no knowing if you're going to get out of it alive. That hasn't changed.
Now, I know that from some of my readings about the VOC that the Navy was often deployed to battle those privateers that were always trying to intercept the VOC. Was this a dangerous area? I think Pete Heine, in fact, met his demise in this area.
I think I'm not sure quite where that was, but one of the tasks of the Dutch Admiralty ships was to sail out into the English Channel and beyond that to the coast of North America to protect incoming and outgoing convoys of VOC ships against pirates, the Dunkirk pirates, the Barbary pirates. That was an important task of naval ships, because the naval ships in the 18th century, or before the 19th century I should say, did not go to Asia. Indonesia was a private enterprise of the VOC, and warships stayed here. They had their own armament to defend their trade in Indonesia, the VOC, but not state-run navies or warships.
Now, in your exhibition, you've sought to ask some questions about heroism. What have you come to as a conclusion in this exhibition, or what are some of the ideas that you've sought to illuminate?
Well, what we hoped to accomplish is that when people come out of the exhibition, that it makes them think about heroism. Makes them think about what heroes really were. They were people who got themselves killed in doing their work, basically. And when you go into the third part of the exhibition, where we show what was actually going on in the Navy through 4 centuries, you see that it is sometimes exciting, sometimes it's extremely boring, sometimes it's inventiveness, which makes it interesting. And that's what we like that's what we like people to realize, that it's not all gold and glitter and glory.
I remember one of the big highlight moments for the Dutch Navy was when they sailed up the Thames River. What exactly was that about?
That was it was decided that there were peace negotiations between the Dutch and the English, and it wasn't getting along. The English were stopping it, and they were not acting on politically. So it was decided that a Dutch fleet would sail up the Medway up to Chatham and Rochester and destroy part of the English fleet, and that's what happened. And this was the first territorial breaking of English territory since William the Conqueror in 1066. The first time foreigners came in and almost onto the land. They took the ships and the castle on fire and put ships on fire. And this, of course, caused enormous panic in England. The English thought there was going to be an invasion, and they got really very worried. And the peace was signed within a month. It was using the navy as a break iron to force the English to come to peace with the Dutch.
Now, sometimes people forget that Holland in the 17th century perhaps represented the strongest navy on earth. Was there the same kind of sort of idea of keeping your head down and not getting it chopped off in those days, or was there a little bit more arrogance among the Dutch merchants and the navy at that time?
I don't think so. I think it was still. I think basically it was the same sort of stuff. You don't get involved. You don't want war. I don't think they wanted war. It wasn't in the interest of merchants to have war. It cost money. Fighting cost money. Only in the extreme situation that there was no other way out would they choose to invest in men of war and fight and go out and fight. I think it's basically was the same sort of Calvinistic view of things. You be plain, normal, do your work, and don't spend money on things you don't need.
I think the David brothers actually lost their lives because they didn't do that.
Yeah, there was also a conflict between the Oranges and but it's sort of something to do with that. Yes.
Well, Willem, thank you very much for explaining this exhibition, and I think people should get out to have a look about the Dutch history here and the maritime point of view.
I certainly hope they'll come. I think they'll enjoy it. Thank you.